Good day. This lecture is titled Water and Phytochemicals. So during this lecture, we're trying to understand the importance of adequate fluid intake, and their effects on our human body. And we will use our knowledge about this adequate fluid intake to recommend the correct fluid intake, based on the recommended intake daily value. We are also going to explain how the body regulates fluid and electrolytes balance, right? How our body hormones can actually help us to actually regulate the amount of fluid and the amount of electrolytes in our body. And during the lectures, we will also describe the different types of phytochemicals based on their functional properties and list where do we find these phytochemicals in our diet. We'll give some examples of some established phytochemicals that is in our diet. And lastly, we will actually try to explain how some of these phytochemicals can help us to actually maintain our health, defend us against chronic diseases. As you know, water is a very, very important compound in our daily life. I call it compound because from a chemistry perspective, water is a compound. Alright. If you read some news, for the past decades, NASA, which is the National Space Agency in the United States of America, they are actually exploring the space, whether it's on the moon or on Mars, for the presence of water. And what the scientists in NASA thinks is actually water represents life. Why? Because life on Earth basically requires water, right, for sustenance. Where we can go without food for a few days, but we can't go without water for a few days. So life cannot exist without water. So in our human body, life is an essential nutrient, more important than any of the other nutrients, be it carbohydrates, proteins, or fats, or even the micronutrients such as vitamins and minerals. We can live a few days without food, but we cannot live, without water. Now, this is what we are. How important is water in our diet? There's a few reasons why water is so important to us. Basically, our body basically is comprises of 50 to 70%, right, of water, based on our weight. And basically our lean muscles, our lean tissues, right, basically make up of basically 75% is water, right? And our fats, basically it contains water in our body. Fats as well is around 25%. Definitely seems our body comprises up to 70% of water. The amount of water present in our body does affect our weight, right? The amount of water usually present in females, obese people, and elderly is usually lower because of a smaller proportion of the lean muscles. The reason why water is so important to our body is because water basically carries out important functions in our body. I think one of the most important functions that is that water, right, carries out in our body is it helps to transport nutrients. Right, most of our nutrients in the bodies are water soluble, so the water in our body helps to transport nutrients throughout the body. Not only that, it also helps to transport water soluble waste products from our cells and from our tissues to our excretory organs, so that our excretory organs can actually get those waste products out of our body. This is the most important function that is actually carried out by water, the transportation function. It also carries out different functions, like it maintains the structure of large molecules, right? Because water molecules does actually structurally bond to proteins and fats molecules to actually give structures to our cells and our tissues. Water also participates in our metabolic reaction. You must remember that our body is a collection of biochemical reaction, or sometimes in the fields of nutrition we call it metabolic reaction. Metabolic reactions is very important because they are the one who actually the metabolic reaction basically uses the nutrients to give us energy, to give us things to maintain life. So water is actually a medium whereby all these metabolic reactions are being carried out. Okay, definitely in order to transport, water is used as a solvent for a large amount of molecules in our body, right? Be it minerals, be it vitamins, be it amino acids and glucose, etc. Okay, and definitely, okay, water acts as a lubricant for our joints, inside our eyes, spinal cord, etc. So it's a natural lubricant that is actually used in our body. And because we need to maintain our temperature at a how do I say, regulated value, a level, okay. One of the commonest question that a student asks sometimes is actually, where do all the water that we drink goes to? Okay, definitely the water is actually stored within our body. Now, which part of the body does all the water stored? Okay, there are a few types of water. I would say that we call them fluid in our body. Okay, there are some. One of them is the intracellular fluid, which is found within the cells, within the body cells. As you know, our human body is made up of a gazillion number of cells, different types of cells. We have the nerve cells, we have the muscle cells, etc. So basically, right, intracellular fluid is the one that actually fills up all the body cells. And then another type of fluids that are found in the body is basically, right, outside the cells, outside the body cells. We call them the extracellular fluid. Okay, the extracellular fluid makes up around 35%, okay, of the entire amount of fluid in our body, right? And basically the intracellular fluid, which is those inside the cells, are basically making up the remaining 65%. Okay, we have another type of fluid which belongs to the extracellular fluid. We call them the intravascular fluid, which is essentially the blood within our blood vessels. Okay, our blood is actually made up predominantly of water. Okay, another type of extracellular fluid is actually the intercellular type of fluid, which is found between the cells. Okay, outside the cells, but between all your body cells. So this is another diagram that I lifted off from a textbook, which basically tells you what is the amount of fluid, or what is the type of fluid that's present in the body, the extracellular fluid, the intercellular fluid, and what are the percentage of each type of fluid that makes up the total amount of fluid in our body. Okay, and basically what happens to the water that we drink, okay, how much of it actually goes to each type of the body fluid. Okay, in this slide, basically I'll talk about a very important mechanism that happens in our human body. Okay, in fact, it happens in most of the animals' body. We call this process homeostasis. Okay, homeostasis is basically a process that a living system actually engage in to keep the environment of the body at a constant set of parameters. Okay, so the amount of fluid in our body is basically one of these parameters that our human body need to maintain for all our cells, for all our biochemical reactions to occur at an optimal level. So the composition of the intra and extracellular fluids, right, basically, differ from each other. Okay, what is happening and what is inside the cells versus what is outside the cells are totally different. Under normal conditions, under healthy normal conditions, right, the fluids from both compartments will lose and replace the components. So our body have the mechanism to adjust such that, the composition of the intra and extracellular remain constant. Right, but when we remain constant doesn't mean that it stays constant all the while. Okay, it needs effort. The body need to expend energy, right, to maintain this balance, to maintain that constant. Right, so we call it the state of equilibrium, or in biological terms we call it a state of homeostasis. Now, what happens when something happens and it causes an imbalance? So the body responds rapidly by adjusting both the water intake and output. Okay, so basically our body will try to tell you, hey, it's time to drink water, you feel thirsty, etc. Or your kidney will remove more water from your body if there's surplus of the water. So basically your body will actually respond accordingly, and that is actually a process of homeostasis. Thereafter, the entire system of the cell remains in a delicate yet controlled state of homeostasis. So whenever there's an imbalance, your body, right, all parts of the tissue, your body's the specific organs, okay, they deal with water intake and water output, will actually work together to return, right, the body back to the controlled state of homeostasis. So what happened? Okay, let's talk about what happened when our water is in our body is inadequate. So, straightforward, we need to make sure that when our water, when the water in our body is inadequate, right? Our body comes into a state of imbalance, and our body respond by actually making us drink water. So how do our body basically initiate this response of thirstiness and make us drink water? So when water is inadequate, okay, what happens is our blood in our blood vessel becomes concentrated, right? You know that the more water you add to a solute, the more diluted the solution is. So blood is essentially just a solution. So when there is inadequate water, it means that your blood becomes more concentrated, or in Singapore terms, gao. More gao, right? You tends to go to the coffee shop and order your kopi gao, etc. So basically, it's just the barista in the coffee shop basically just reduce the amount of water they add to your cup of coffee. So same thing when our body is experience the inadequacy of water, the blood will naturally becomes concentrated, and then we will feel a drying sensation in the mouth, and this is the sensation of thirstiness, right? And the hypothalamus initiate the drinking behavior. The hypothalamus is basically an important control center in our brain. It initiate a lot of homeostatic action. So basically, the drinking behavior is basically initiated by this part of the brain called the hypothalamus. Now, what happens when the water intake is excessive? That means there are now too much water in our body, right? And when you drink too much water, what happens? Okay, first you feel that your stomach get bloated out. The stomach expand, and basically the muscles, the stomach is actually made up of muscle, a lot of muscle tissues, and there are some receptors on this on the stomach wall. We call them the stretch. We call them muscular receptors maybe, and basically when the stomach expands, it stretches these receptors, and these receptors send signal, right, to tell you to stop drinking, right? You're too full, right? You're bloated out, stop drinking. Now, also when you have too much water in your system, okay, instead of becoming more concentrated, it's the other opposite. The blood becomes more diluted, okay, or we can say the blood volume actually increases. Now, when the blood volume increases, means instead of how many liters, a very specific amount of liters in the blood of circulating in the body, there is a slight increase in your body. The blood vessels will send signals right to the heart, okay, and basically the heart will respond by telling you to the brain, and the brain will tell you to stop drinking. So what happens if the amount of water intake is so low that our body basically is deprived, okay, too much of the water, or too much water is lost from the body. Like for example, you went on a marathon without replenishing your fluid, and basically and when too much of this water from your body is being lost and is not replaced, now we will develop symptoms of dehydration. Okay, so dehydration, just like dehydrate, in chemistry term, or in English term, dehydration means the removal of water. So basically, dehydration of the body means basically is the removal of water from your body without replacing it, and therefore it causes a state of where your body is depriving of water. So what is the sign and symptoms of dehydration? Basically, the first sign of dehydration is thirstiness. So you feel very thirsty, right? This is your body a signal for you to actually, can you please drink water? You have much water loss, and therefore you need to replace it. Now, if a person is unable to actually replace this water in a short while of feeling the thirstiness, other symptoms or other more serious symptoms of dehydration will actually develop. Like for example, you start to feel weakness of the limbs, you start to feel exhausted, and you start to actually have delirium. Okay, basically these are, remember when you watch a movie, when a person was like, lost in a desert, and basically was deprived of water over a period of time, basically they start to actually imagine things and delirium, etc. So this is actually the cause of very serious symptoms of dehydration. Okay, now if dehydration is water refreshment is still not forthcoming, okay, after developing serious symptoms, now death may occur. You can die of water deprivation over a period of long time. So, like I said, the early sign of dehydration is basically thirstiness and fatigue. That means it's tiredness. Now, you have to make sure that if you are thirsty, or if you are feeling tired, and you basically reason out that, oh, this tiredness or fatigue must be due to not drinking enough water. I think you definitely need to replenish water, and the best way to do that is to replenish water as water. Choose to drink water, right, instead of beverages, or even caffeinated beverages. Okay, right. So basically, we always say that, oh no, if you're feeling very tired, sometimes in the afternoon, or sometimes when after a period of work, maybe you're just lacking water rather than lacking in caffeine. This is another slide which I actually another textbook cutting that I actually get from a very good nutrition textbook. Now, basically, this is talking about signs of dehydration and what are the different symptoms that go in when you lose a certain amount of water. Right, it ranges from body weight loss of water from 1 to 2%. Okay, the body weight loss basically is I think when we talk about body weight loss in this context, is basically loss due to water loss. Right, and the symptoms develop from thirst, fatigue, all the way to actually exhaustion and delirium and collapse as you continue to lose water. Before, our body is always under a constant state of homeostasis. Our body carefully maintains water balance by manipulating water intake and output. So when the water intake is too low, right, our actually the water conservation, the most important water conservation organ in our body is actually the kidney. The kidney will conserve from water, and basically it will actually only excrete a small volume of concentrated urine. So when the body has excess water, on the contrary, the opposite effect, the kidneys will excrete a large volume of dilute urine. So what's the color of a concentrated urine and versus the color of a dilute urine, right? Every time basically when I go to the toilet, I think I make it a habit that I check out the color, right, and how concentrated my urine is, so that I gauge myself how much water I've been taking, or do I need to actually replenish my water intake, or to increase my water intake, etc. Right, I remember when I went to Bali some years ago, and in the toilet of the airport, basically there's a color chart of the urine. Basically, you can actually use the color chart of the urine to actually see whether your urine is a bit too concentrated or is it too diluted, etc. Something that some interesting things that you can actually learn from traveling. Although rare, this kind water intoxication may happen. Okay, so what is water intoxication? It's basically your intoxication means poisoning. Okay, so you can be poisoned by water. Again, how can you be poisoned by water? Right, your first question is because water is good. You keep on encouraging your children, yourself to drink more water, drink more water. So how does water intoxication happens? Okay, it happens. It may happen. Okay. Not necessarily everybody will have this water intoxication, okay, but it may happen when you taking too much water. I mean too much water, or you have what we call kidney disorder, and your kidney is not functioning well, such that it doesn't produce urine that much, and therefore your water keeps accumulating in your body. This slide basically talks more about this water intoxication. Okay, on this part of the slide, we talk about the symptoms of water intoxication, which includes confusion, convulsions. Convulsions means you're shaking. Death, definitely for extreme cases, and hypoatemia, which means you have low sodium content in your blood. Okay, so basically hypothermia, it means dilution of sodium concentration in your blood, right? And what happened is because you cannot regulate the amount of water in your body, so the blood gets too diluted, right? And this can be caused by ingestion of large amount of water within a few hours. So it's enough for talking about the importance of water itself and maybe the danger that comes with too much water. Now let's talk about where do we get water from for our body. Okay, definitely our body does produce some water, but however the amount of water generated by our body during metabolism is really insignificant and not enough for our optimal or normal body functions. So we need to actually take in water. Okay, so where do we find water, right? To take. So the best source of dietary water is actually water itself, definitely, right? And definitely water is found in nearly all foods, okay? Because as we understand, water is actually a very important component of life, okay? And basically, it seems we can, and all our foods are basically living matters, living materials, right? Be it plant or animal. So nearly all our food, okay, actually contains water, right? Including beverages, okay, like fruit juice, orange juice, anything that's beverage, coffee and tea, etc. Now, definitely, water is also found in whole fruits and vegetables. Now, this is a table of actually looking at, what's the potential water in a few selected fruits. Like, definitely water is 100% water, so no debate about it, right? Like, milk, strawberries, all the fruits, all the vegetables, basically contains 90 to 99% water. Okay, so basically they are actually a good source of water itself. Fruit juice, etc. Right, fruits like seafood, shrimp, etc. contain significant amount of water. Definitely, when you talk about dry food like butter, like crackers, cereals, pizzas, dry biscuit, oils and sugars, basically we cannot find much water in there, although they do contain some water. Okay. Now we understand that water is very important in our body, right? Then why do our body actually have mechanisms or processes to remove water from our body, like our urine, and then perspiration, etc. Okay, now water is very important for life. But it's very important for a certain process that we uses water, and because it uses this water is lost, from our body. So we need to actually take in water to replace this water loss. So in order for waste products to be actually, get out of our body, right? Okay, where does this waste product come from? Waste products are produced by our everyday metabolic activities. Now, we need water to help us to actually move or excrete these waste metabolic products out of our body. Because when these waste metabolic products accumulate in our body, it can be very toxic to our living cells. So basically, we need water or enough water to actually get rid of them, get them out of our body. So this amount of water, okay, that actually help us to remove waste products from our body is known as the obligatory water excretion. That means the must-have amount of water to excrete waste product out of our body. Now, technically, in general, the minimum amount, okay, that our body, minimum amount of water that's excreted from our body for this kind of removal of waste materials is around 500 milliliter of water each day. Okay, it's around 2 cups, basically, right? So basically what our body do is depending on how much waste they produce in our body, etc., because it really depends on our activities of our body, etc., and it's definitely very highly variation, varies a lot between each of our body. So basically our body will actually adjust accordingly. If more is needed, they will adjust the balance. Okay, you need to drink more water, etc. So we discussed just now that basically our body also maintains a state of homeostasis in terms of the amount of water that is in our body. We call it the water balance. So when the person do not drink enough water, right, our kidney will excrete less urine. Our urine will be more concentrated. Conversely, when a person drinks more water, kidney excrete more urine and the urine becomes more diluted. Okay. Now, what is the amount of loss of water per day in a sense? Okay, the average out. Remember just now we talked about we need 500 milliliters to remove. That is the minimum amount or adequate amount, averaged that to remove all the waste material by the body. But that's the minimum amount, or the adequate amount. But usually we lose more than that. Okay, what is the amount of water that we lose in average in a day? Is basically around 2.5 liters, around 2,500 milliliters. Now, where do we lose the water? Basically, we lost the water from the lungs, right? When we breathe in, breathe out, okay? All the exhalation contains water vapor. So this water vapor is actually water from our body, okay? Through our skin as perspiration, okay? When we feel hot, our skin will try to regulate its temperature. Our sweat glands will actually produce perspiration, okay, to cool our skin. And definitely, apart from urine, okay, our feces also contains water, okay, right? So basically, all the water loss from lungs, the skin, sweat, and feces basically accounts almost half of the daily loss, right? And maybe you don't see yourself perspiring that often, but you actually does lose water, quite a significant amount of water, from your skin and through your breathing and through your feces, etc. So this kind of water loss, sometimes we don't feel it. Okay, we don't feel it, and we some people quite insensible water loss because you don't feel it. Okay, definitely urine, you know. Oh, no, today I urine more. Today I urine less. You has a gauge of the amount of water lost through urine, but the amount of water lost through lungs vapor, sweat from the skin as well as feces is sometimes it's not easy to actually judge or gauge. So how much water can be lost from each of these sources definitely varies. Okay? It varies from the environment, how hot the temperature, how hot the environment is, how humid the environment is. Like in Singapore, it's both hot and humid, and definitely we does lost significant amount of body fluid through our environment. Now also it depends on what are you engaging your body in, what kind of physical condition. Is it exercising, or are you sick, right? For example, you're having a fever, etc. So all these things basically determine amount of weight loss from your body. Now these two tables summarizes the water balance mechanism in our body, like where do we get our water from. So the first table talk about the intake of water. Where do we get the water from? Beverage, food, right? Our body metabolism, what's the amount, right? Okay, for example, from our food we basically intake 700 to 1,000 milliliter, etc. So if we add all this out between the beverage, food, and metabolism, we have around an intake of 1,450 to 2,800 milliliters of water intake daily. Then how do we lose all this water? Okay, now then the second table on the right shows you what are the different origin or sources of water loss. Like the kidneys, it's 500 mils to 1,400 mils, etc. From the skin, from the lungs, from the feces, the GI tract, and total up is also around 1,450 to 2,800 mils. So this is what I talk about water balance. The total input mass matches the total output. You do not need to be both exactly equal, but it must be around, right? The amount should at least match each other. As a picture that I extracted from a textbook again, you can read it. I don't think I should go through it. The points are exactly the same as the previous slides. Like I said, our body is always in a state of constant, or we call it the homeostasis. Our body, it requires our systems, our body systems, our cells and our organs to work in a healthy and optimal manner in order to maintain the healthy state of homeostasis. So for water balance, we definitely requires a very healthy kidneys. All right, we need to actually regulate our fluid intake such that it's always sufficient, right? And basically, right, we have to maintain healthy kidneys and stop, causing kidney any distress, etc. And definitely to prevent kidney stone formation. So what are the water recommendations as a dietitian or nutritionist? Oh, definitely when we talk about recommending water intake, etc., a dietitian or nutritionist or any person will actually need to consider a few things. You need to consider diet, the activity level, the environmental temperature and humidity before we actually recommend what kind of water intake that is required. Now, definitely the one way to actually judge is basically to express the amount of water in proportions to the amount of energy expended under average environmental condition. So what is the formula here? We always recommended 1 to 1.5 mils of water per per kilocal expended. So per 1 kilocal energy expended by our body, you basically need to put in 1 to 1.5 mils of water. So if a person, basically a rich person, regardless of gender, male or female, right, basically expends, okay, use out 2,000 kilocalories per day. So basically we need around 2 to 3 liters of water a day. So like I mentioned just now, right, any food in our diet basically contains water. So, okay, when you choose beverage, what are suitable beverage that actually replenish water? Okay, or most suitable or meeting our body fluids needs, right? So I think in our healthy living type of context, right, we try to eat healthily and drink healthily. I think we should, replenish water by actually drinking beverage with fewer or low or no kilocal. That means, when you need, you should drink beverage with no additional type of energy. Right. So also we have to choose where we have to be conscious about caffeinated beverage. Okay, because on the contrary of replenish fluid, caffeinated beverage may actually cause your body to lose even more fluid. Okay, so I think the best beverage to choose to replenish water in your body is actually just water. This slide talks about how does the fluid in our body regulates the blood volume and the blood pressure. Okay, so actually kidneys is an important organ to control the amount of fluid in our body, and by controlling the amount of fluid in your body, basically is directly controlling the amount of blood or the volume of blood circulating in our blood vessels in our body, or we call it the circulatory system. So kidneys basically regulate blood pressure and blood volume because you imagine your blood vessels as a pipe. Okay, your blood vessel is a pipe, and the blood is like water. Blood is flowing through the pipe. Okay, so the more water, the size of the pipe, the volume of the pipe is always held constant. So when water flows through the pipe, when there's more water or there's more blood flowing through the pipe, definitely the blood pressure will actually increase correspondingly. So by regulating the amount of blood or the volume of blood within our circulatory systems, the kidney is also regulating the blood pressure or controlling the blood pressure. Okay, so this is what this slide is trying to tell you. Now we know that human beings are basically control freak. Okay, we are control freak. Not because our behavior is very controlling. Not only that, okay, because our brain basically controls every aspect of our living environment, okay, within our body. So basically, a kidney is actually a distant organ away from the brain, but the brain do have a lot of mechanism to actually control the kidney. Okay, no, the kidney doesn't have a brain. Remember, right? The kidney doesn't have a brain. The kidney basically acts on instructions from the brain. So if kidney is a very important organ to regulate the amount of fluid in our body and thereby regulate the blood volume and therefore the blood pressure, how do the kidneys know when to retain water, when to release water? So remember, the kidney is the one who actually ultimately decide whether the water lost through urine. So is it going to be a more concentrated urine or is it going to be a more diluted urine? Okay, so the kidney is the one that control this, but the brain actually controls the kidney. So the brain will send signal to the kidney to tell the kidney, hey, now we have too much water already, can you please release more water? Oh no, okay, or the brain will tell you, oh hey kidney, sorry to tell you, this person is not drinking enough water and therefore we need to conserve the water in the body. Can you please do not excrete so much water? So how do the brain set signals to the kidney? There is a few mechanisms. We have the ADH, the antidiuretic hormone, we have the aldosterone, you have the renin, and the angiotensin. These are either hormones or messenger molecules that the brain uses to send signals to the kidney, such that the kidney will act upon the instructions whether to regulate the amount of fluid in our body. I do not want to actually emphasize on all these hormone and messenger. I think this is more on the physiology part of things. We heard for the nutrition course, but although you need to know what are the different hormones and messenger molecules can actually as a signaling molecules for our kidney, to 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 perform its functions, right? I think it's just sufficient to know what are the different systems in place. Okay, you do not need to know in terms in detail of the physiology of it. Now, fluid and electrolyte balance. This is the slide we want to talk about. Okay, now basically, like we talk so much about water, and then when water is in balance, we talk is actually the body fluid in balance. But actually, in our body, fluid is not just 100% water. Okay, yes, it's predominantly water, but it's not just water, because the water has definitely has something dissolved in it. There's something dissolved in it. For example, I give you an example. In our blood, the water is in the blood. It's actually the solution of the whole blood. Okay, but in the blood itself, there are cells. There are red blood cells, white blood cells. There are platelets. There are neutrophils, etc. Now, also in the water component of the blood, which is the blood plasma, it's a solution. It's not just 100% water. It's a solution that makes up of carbonates, chloride, sodium, etc. So that's what we call it fluid. The fluid is basically a solution, right? And the solution contains what we call electrolyte. Electrolyte are basically ions, positive or negative ions, or some chemistry people call cations and anions, right? So why it's very important, actually, not just to maintain fluid or water balance. It's very important to maintain electrolyte balance, because if the balance is not balanced well, living cells can get ruptured. Okay, if too much water enters the cells, or if the cells will just collapse if too much water leaves the cells. So what are the different types of electrolyte that's present in our body fluid? We have sodium chloride, potassium, calcium, phosphorus, magnesium, and sulfur. All these are minerals affecting the movement of water in the cells. What it means, it means that they are present in both the intracellular fluid as well as the extracellular fluid. That means both inside and outside the cells. They need to maintain a certain balance, right, such that water do not necessarily move in one direction. That means from the inside cell to outside cell, or from the outside cell to inside cell. Because in either movement, it causes a bit of it causes the imbalance of pressure, and the cell will basically either rupture or actually collapse. Like I mentioned previously, basically, the fluids itself, whether intracellular, extracellular, or even in the blood plasma, etc. Basically, they are solutions. We call them solution because they are water that contains electrolytes. And what are electrolytes? Electrolytes are essentially positive and negative ions. It's just like your sodium chloride, contains sodium ions and chloride ions. But they are more than that. Just now in the previous slide, we talked about different type of minerals inside, like sodium, potassium, chlorine, etc. So basically, all these cations or anions are present in our bodily fluid, whether it's outside the cells or inside the cells. Okay, in the next few slides, I'll be actually I was writing on how does the body actually, how does water move in and out of the cells, and how does electrolyte concentration in extracellular and intracellular fluid actually influence the movement of water, in going into or outside the cells. Okay, this is more on the physiology, and basically you can read upon it, you can understand it, but I'm not going to elaborate on this. Now remember that as I begin, water is so important. Now, if water is so important, our body basically have to maintain the correct amount of water, adequate water in our body. That's why we have our water balance, our fluid balance, etc. Now, sometimes due to certain conditions and some medications, right, our body loses its ability to regulate, to compensate, or to maintain the water balance, right? So, in what kind of conditions, for example, severe diarrhea, right, caused by food poisoning or some medication, vomiting, heavy sweating, burns, and very traumatic wound, etc. So, this kind of condition will actually makes our body lost our ability to control or to maintain the fluid and electrolyte balance, and this result in our fluid and electrolyte imbalance. Now, in this kind of situation where our body loses the ability to compensate for this imbalance, so depending on what causes the fluid loss, right? Different types of fluid will be lost. Okay, so if it's because of that, we will tend to our body will dehydrate. Okay, and this dehydration is because of the lack of a compensation type of ability, right? Replenishing the water alone is insufficient to restore electrolyte imbalance because we lose the electrolyte, lose the solute. So you lose the solute by drinking water, which doesn't contain the electrolyte or the ions. It doesn't help us to replenish them. So in this case, we need some medical intervention. So this table that I actually included in this slide basically tells you, to actually distinguish the type of solute loss or electrolyte loss under certain condition, causation of the fluid loss. For example, if a person vomited or have a diarrhea, okay, so the type of solute loss is most likely to be sodium, right? But if it's because of tumor growth, medical, cancer, etc., then basically it's because you will lose more potassium than any of the ions, okay? Or if it's uncontrolled diabetes, right? Okay, your solute loss will be actually glucose, okay, depending on the individual, okay, right? So basically these are different type of solute that can be lost by different routes. So remember I said that under such conditions where your body cannot compensate for this fluid or electrolyte loss, okay, how medical intervention is required. Okay, so how do we actually, in most of the time, what kind of medical interventions? If the cases just as chronic diarrhea, etc., okay, it basically sometimes is quite life-threatening. Okay, so you need a rapid replacement of fluid and electrolyte. Replacement therapy. So one of them is actually the oral rehydration therapy. Basically, it's just to ask you to drink electrolyte. All right. Okay. Like for example, solutions, a water that contains all the essential electrolytes, right? But this is basically through the oral route. So the oral rehydration therapy or the ORT basically, it is just ask you to drink a simple solution of sugar, salt, and water. Now, in such a situations, right, usually the doctor will just give you the ORT materials, which is the solution, and they ask you to actually drink at certain intervals, right? It can be easily prepared from ingredients available from a supermarket. You do not really need to buy all the expensive ones from the hospitals, right? Definitely the hospital recommend you this, but actually, knowing that it's just a simple solution of sugar, salt, and water, you can actually prepare it yourself. But if, for example, the condition is so bad and we need fluid and electrolyte replenishment ASAP or in a very rapid type of situation, the medical professionals or the doctors will actually will prescribe intravenous type of replenishment. That means they will actually put in the electrolyte straight into your body. Okay, through intravenous, that means they put a needle into one of your blood vessels, and basically the fluid will be developed straight into your blood vessels. Now, a very important thing about why are ions and electrolytes so important in our fluid is because they help your body to maintain acid-base balance. Okay, right? We need again. This is actually a process of body homeostasis. We need to maintain a certain acid-base balance in our body such that all the biochemical reactions in our body occurs in the optimal pH range. Now, as you know, the acid, when you learn the definition of acid in your secondary school, acid is defined by the concentration of the hydrogen plus ions. And when you have a high concentration of hydrogen plus ions, right, in your body, then your body fluid is basically acidic. Okay, so where does this hydrogen ions manufacture in your body? Basically, they're generated during normal energy as metabolism. That is when we burn our glucose or sugar to get energy. Basically, hydrogen ions are produced, right? And basically, we need a base to neutralize it. Okay, so that to actually maintain acid-base balance. This is a simple chart, highlighting what are the different ways whereby we can actually maintain acid-base balance. Actually, the way to maintain acid-base balance is basically right maintaining the buffer in the blood. Maintaining the buffer in the blood basically deals with the concentration of electrolyte in the blood plasma, and indirectly deals with the amount of water or fluid in our body. Respiration, in the lungs also does control right the fluctuation of pH as well as the kidney, because remember I told you kidney basically actually the main organs that regulate the fluid volume in our body. Okay, we have enough of water. Now let's move on to another second topic of this particular chapters. We call it the phytochemicals. Okay, now phytochemicals, as the name implies, is actually chemicals from the plant. Phyto is a Greek name for plant. Okay, Phyto. Okay, so phytochemicals indirectly we're saying that these are the molecules from plant, and plant includes fruits and vegetables. So how do we properly define actually phytochemicals? So phytochemicals are compounds found in plant-derived food. Okay, since we're talking about nutrition, let's talk about our plant food. Okay, now plant food is actually getting a lot of emphasis, right? Plant-based food product, etc., or plant-derived food product, etc. Now, phytochemicals have very high biological activity in our body. Okay, like it or not like it, basically we know that we need to eat enough fruits and vegetables in order for our body to stay healthy. And what is inside the fruit and vegetables that animals-based or food does not have is basically the phytochemicals. Okay, now we can say about vitamins, we can say about minerals, but please, vitamins and minerals are also present in our animal derived food. So the only difference between the animal derived food and the plant derived food is basically the phytochemicals. Okay, we have a lot of phytochemicals, a class of phytochemicals under a lot of scientific studies. Okay, at the moment we are gaining knowledge about what are the important things, what are the important phytochemicals, what are the phytochemicals that are healthy for us, etc. Or how do I say, they can benefit our health, right? Definitely, because of the amount of studies on specific types of phytochemicals, some of these phytochemicals have very conclusive evidence. Some of these phytochemicals only provide tentative answers because they are still in the early stage of research, right? And real research is something that you when you find out something, you trigger more questions being asked. So all these things are still under studied. Okay, a few of them have already very conclusive evidence, but most of it is still under exploration. So, okay, phytochemicals basically have various functions, right? Okay, if you talk about food science, right, phytochemicals basically contribute to a lot of sensory attributes of food. Right, when we talk about sensory attribute, we talk about the taste, we talk about aroma, we talk about texture, we talk about colors. Okay, this is what we see, what we feel, what we smell, right? So phytochemicals present in plants, fruits, and vegetables basically contribute to the taste, the aromas, and colors, and sensory attributes in food. Okay, in fact, without them, basically vegetables is just fibers. Okay, nothing else. And fibers, as you know, doesn't have any taste, doesn't have any color. All right, it doesn't have any aroma. Right, now in terms of what do they do in our body, the physiological effect, there are a lot of physiological effects. And like I said before just now, the benefits or the physiological effects of all these phytochemicals is still under studied. Still under exploration. There are scientific studies trying to establish, find conclusive evidence over it. Like in some of those suggested function include mimics hormones, stimulating enzyme, different DNA replication, etc. I think suppressing inflammation, destroying bacteria, antioxidants, all these things are just some of the physiological effects that phytochemicals have in our body. Now, because phytochemicals in our food, like fruits and vegetables, right, they are not as pharmacologically studied as like medicine. In medicine, we know exactly how much you need to take. You know exactly how much you take beyond will be harmful to our body, that kind of thing. So phytochemical, because it's present in fruits and vegetables, it's natural, etc. We scientists do not, seldom actually undergo pharmacological studies on these chemicals. So and therefore we have limited knowledge, limited data to say that, oh, you cannot take this amount, you cannot take beyond this amount. Definitely there are studies or recent studies that say that certain phytochemicals would have adverse reaction or adverse effect if you take beyond that limit, okay, but most of them do not have this indication. So when you are actually partaking in phytochemicals, you must be you must have the kind of a notion that too much of it may have some issues, may have some adverse effect. This specific slide shows a picture that I actually extract out from a textbook showing the different sources of phytochemicals. Now, okay, you guys can see all of them basically are plant-based. Okay, all of them are plant-based, and basically you know that basically as long as you're plant-based, there are phytochemicals inside. Just like I mentioned that phytochemicals basically contributes to the sensory attributes of fruits and vegetables. Without them, basically, the fruits and vegetables taste or feel or smell nothing like them. Okay, they are, if without phytochemicals, they are just a body of fibers without any taste, without any smell. So what are the phytochemicals? The color of different, like lycopene and anthocyanin, they are actually orange to deep purple. Okay, right? And basically, when you talk about beta carotene, lemazine, etc., they are basically orange, right? Lanolin in garlic, they basically yellowish, that kind of thing. And there are green color phytochemicals as well, like the beta carotene, the lutein, etc. So basically, all these colors are commonly seen in our fruits and vegetables: the red, the orangey color, the yellow color, the purple color, and green color, right? And all these are basically from the phytochemicals itself, the color. What is the health benefits of actually phytochemicals? Okay, we know that the government health promotion board, Singapore Health Promotion Board, has been encouraging us to actually take at least 2 servings of fruits and 2 servings of vegetables daily. Okay, apart from the vitamins and minerals and the fibers from the fruits and vegetables, I think the phytochemicals itself actually contribute significantly to our health. So a variety of phytochemicals it seems to protect our DNA from any damage or etc. And basically in that way we actually defend our body against cancer. Alright. Some examples that give us some conclusive evidence includes the phytoestrogen from the soy products and lycopene from tomatoes. These are some of the more common examples. So phytoestrogen, okay, the sources includes all the legumes like soy, flaxseed, whole grains also contains phytoestrogens, and some fruits and vegetables also contains them. Okay, now what scientific study has said is that a high intake of phytoestrogen actually may protect against breast and prostate cancers. Okay, now why is that so? Is because chemically, in terms of chemical structure, this molecule, okay, or phytoestrogen, basically have the same chemical structure similar to the hormone estrogen. Okay, and some other in vitro studies have actually established that these molecules have antioxidant properties, and the antioxidant properties of this molecule basically appears to slow down the growth of certain cancers. Now, if phytoestrogens may protect cancer, so why not we actually, just take as much as you can? But there are studies to actually say that soy products or phytoestrogens, right, may cause issues depending on the source. Okay, so it's better that unless pharmacological studies establish the amount of phytoestrogen that you should be taking, you have to actually consume in moderation, right? During in your diet and throughout your whole life. Okay. Now it's also important that sometimes we do not obtain it from soy extract or supplements. It's better to actually try get it from the natural food source like soy meal, tofu, etc. Phytoestrogen is so proper in the sense that because it is actually recommended by the American Cancer Society, right? They actually recommend that women with breast cancer to consume moderate amount of soy as part of the healthy plant diet. But however, right, you do not need to actually intentionally increase the intake, right? Through soy supplements or is phytoestrogen supplements. With regards to lycopene in its protection against cancers, apparently there are growing amount of evidence, but there's still not enough. The evidence presented in science in the clinical study is still not enough to actually say definitely or conclusively that lycopene protect against certain type of cancers. As you can recall, lycopene basically is red to orange to red pigments that are present in a lot of fruits like grapefruit fruits, tomatoes, apricots, guava, papaya, etc. Interestingly, food science basically have a lot of bearings over this lycopene because um, lycopene do changes to different form, right? Like carotenoid, etc. to different food processing and cooking, right? Especially for tomatoes, when you cook tomatoes, basically it actually increases the amount of lycopene in the tomatoes. Lycopene has been established by scientific studies as being a powerful antioxidant. Okay, and this powerful antioxidant may seems to inhibit cancer cell growth, right? And a lot of studies have proven that it is beneficial if properly taken through dietary source rather than supplementation. Defending against heart diseases, okay, diet rich in unprocessed plant food seems to support heart health. Okay, why? Because definitely the abundance of fibers, especially also the phytochemicals such as flavonoids. So what are flavonoids? Flavonoid is a large group of phytochemicals found in whole grain, legumes, soy vegetables, fruits, herbs, spice, teas, chocolate, nuts, olive oil, and red wine. Okay, right. So they are basically very, very, very. How do I say? Very. How do I say? Universals in our fruits and vegetables. There are various mechanism by which the flavonoids can help to protect against protect the our human body against heart diseases. It actually have an effect on actually lowering your LDL and protecting your low density lipoprotein against oxidation. It minimizes inflammations in our blood vessels, and basically it also reduce the blood platelet stickiness and therefore increase. And in all these things basically slow down the progressions of atherosclerosis. Okay, atherosclerosis is a process whereby blood vessels are blocked by fat tissue accumulating within the blood vessels wall. Apart from flavonoids, there are other colored phytochemicals like the curcumin, lutein, and zeaxanthin. They actually have different protective or possible protective effect. So as you actually go through the literature, you Google all the phytochemicals, you read about it. Basically, there are a lot of people saying different protective effects of certain phytochemicals. Now, when you are looking at all this information, you have to be very careful because I will only believe scientific evidence. So if the thing is talking about the potential or possible protective effect, right, they have to show scientific evidence to support them. Now the topic of phytochemicals, etc., and all the nutrients, etc., where we're going to study, right, basically brings us to this particular term called the functional food. So what are functional food? Functional food refers to food that are used to maintain health and prevent diseases. Okay, they actually, they are not there to provide nutrients, right? Like basic nutrients like carbohydrate, proteins, fats, vitamins, and minerals. They are there to provide more. What is this more for? And this more is to maintain health and to prevent diseases. Okay, most of the functional food in the industry right now, okay, I'm not sure whether, are they qualified to be a functional food, okay, right? But most of the functional food in the market now basically are very rich in phytochemicals, okay, because these are the ones that are, phytochemicals extensively studied for their whatever health effect, okay. And when we talk about functional food, it includes like unprocessed food like colorful fruits and vegetables. It also includes processed food, just like certain fortifications or etc. So in summary, basically, right, in the first half of the lectures, we talk about water, and we know that water makes up 50 to 70% of the adult's body weight, right? Water is so important because it deals with the transportation of nutrients and waste material. It takes part in chemical reaction, it acts as solvent, right? It functions as a shock absorber, it regulates body temperature. Now, fluid intake must be equal to fluid output. Not say equal, must balance, must match fluid output to achieve what we call fluid balance. And then we have the hormones and messengers to help us to actually maintain homeostasis. And when this balance is off, these hormones and messenger molecule help us to restore this balance. Okay. Still on the topic of water, electrolytes help to distribute water intake inside. It helps the electrolytes or the solute or the ions dissolved in this water or in the fluid basically maintain the pressure inside and outside the cell such that the cell structure or the integrity is being maintained, right? Acid-base balance is also being maintained, right? Now, whenever the fluids or electrolyte are lost from our body, right, the kidney plays a very critical role in restoring this balance. So in the second half of the topic, this particular lesson, we talk about phytochemicals, and we know that phytochemicals are basically chemicals from plant. So our dietary sources from plant includes fruits and vegetables, whole grain, legumes, and pulse. Essential to consume a wide range of sources, definitely, okay, right? In a point view of nutritionalists or nutrition, they rather that you actually derive your phytochemicals from fresh and unprocessed source, right, directly from the plant. Fruits and vegetables may protect health against cancers, heart diseases, and other diseases. Okay, the evidence somehow on certain phytochemicals are quite conclusive. On others are lagging still, but definitely future study will actually help to reinforce this. Excessive amount obtained from supplement may cause harmful effect. May, depending on how much is there, and depending on whether pharmacological studies has been established to say that what is the amount that your body can tolerate.